So we are live now. Good evening. I, Akhila CG from TellMeYourStory.biz, welcome you this evening for a discussion on the book Kolkata Classics, and I'm privileged to be in the company of author Supriya Newar. But before beginning today's session, let me tell you that TellMeYourStory.biz calls for registrations for TMY's review September 2022, themed on food and drinks in association with York Center for Asian Research. Last date for submissions is 20th June. Now let me begin with introducing our today's author, Supriya Newar. Supriya Newar was born and brought up in Kolkata. A student of arts, she holds a master's degree in international relations and has steered noteworthy brands for 2 decades. A sensitive writer and poet, Supriya befriended the pen very early and has several hundred articles and travelogues published widely. An aficionado of Indian classical as well as folk music, an avid book reader and traveler, Supriya is also a visiting lecturer and consultant. Her last book, Kolkata Chronicles, received much love and appreciation. You can reach out to her on her social handles. Welcome, Supriya.
Thank you so much, Akhila. Pleasure to be here.
So, first of all, Supriya, tell us that how did you think of focusing your entire collection on your experiences of living and growing up in Calcutta? What was the idea behind it, and what was the story behind keeping the title as Kolkata Classics?
Right. For the benefit of our viewers, may I just show the cover so they'll have a reference?
Yeah, please.
We're discussing, this is the book, we're discussing Kolkata Classics. It's a book of verse. Uh, Akhila, the thing is that as far as the title goes, if you notice, all the 2 dozen odd poems in the book are subjects that are quintessentially Kolkata. Uh, they absolutely typify the everyday life of Kolkata. You could be, hailing from the who's who of the world to as they say, the Aam Aadmi. Although I don't like to make these barriers and differences, but I'm saying that you could be doing anything. Your profession could be whatever. Your age could be anything. So, for example, if you see the whole roster of poems and the topics, these are elements that we've grown up with, that we right, that's the cover. So these are the topics are things that we have grown up with. It is what makes our city a classic. And despite so many changes that our world has gone through, not just COVID, otherwise too, all the hazard technological changes and the way we live and everything, these very humble things continue to remain relevant and present in our life. And I thought that's absolutely fascinating. And that is what is a classic, right? A classic is something that has stood the test of time. So an umbrella is an umbrella is an umbrella. In Kolkata, we call it a chhata.
Chhatra. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, in Hindi and Bangla, it's called chhata, incidentally. So therefore, these are sorry. I do apologize for a very sore throat. I've been traveling, and this is what I've contracted. Uh, so these are elements that are classic. Therefore, the title was, almost like a no-brainer. They are Kolkata classic items. But because it is a book of verse, we decided to play with the typography. Instead of straight away writing Kolkata classics, if you see, it's been broken up because poetry allows you that space to set your own pace, rhythm, and style. So although it is classics, yet we've broken up the word classics and Kolkata both. I suppose if I was doing a novel or something, I wouldn't treat it that way. So that is Kolkata classics for you.
Interesting. So, Supriya, like most of the poems in this collection have titles either in Hindi or Bengali language. Also, all your poems are written in English, are infused with Bengali words, adding a lot of local flavor to your writing. So, how
Right.
did you think of using such a mix of languages while writing poetry in English?
So actually, none of the titles are in Hindi. They are either in English or in Bangla. Not a single
Yeah.
title is in Hindi.
Not
There
Hindi
are
for
words
me. Yeah.
for you.
So
Yes,
as a
exactly.
reader,
I
like
realize.
so I
So
interpret it
Chhota,
as some
Chhata in Bengali as well.
yeah,
Uh,
chata.
I have a poem. I have a poem called Maidan, which in Hindi
Yeah,
is Maidan, and in Bengal only the pronunciation changes. So in
yeah,
Bangla we will say Maidan,
yeah,
because we becomes o in
yeah.
Bangla.
Right.
So it is Moedan, but when I'm writing it out phonetically in English, I will still write Maidan. So actually, all the titles are, it isn't language specific, it is how the area or the topic is referred to in the city. So, for example, you will find more people saying chhata than umbrella. Again, irrespective of who they are, what they do, etc. Moidan, the official name of that area in the city's Brigade Parade Ground. Nobody says that. Okay, everyone from your bus driver to the cab caller to everybody will say Maidan or Moidan.
Right.
So it is the popular term that has been used. If that popular term happens to be English, I've retained it in English. If it happens to be in Bangla, it comes out in Bangla. But Hindi has not been used at all, hardly. I mean, not even one or two words in the whole book. For example, I've said cha. Now,
Yeah.
cha is chai, right?
Right.
So, cha in Bengal, I mean, where do I begin and what do I even say? You have to read the poem. I don't think you can find a single household for miles around anywhere in Kolkata that does not gulp a few cups of tea every day.
Right.
So again, coming back, these were elements, and also Akhila, as ordinary as these elements are, as everyday as they are, I think they are very precious because our life is incomplete without all of this. Our city is incomplete without all of this. It gives the city a signature, and its identity. But yet, I haven't read a poem on Cha. I mean, I couldn't come across any. Wasn't that I was sitting and doing the research, but over the years, I've been a voracious reader of poetry, prose, all of that. I haven't read a single poem on any of these topics. So I
Yeah.
thought, hey, let's do this. This might be fun. And
Right.
that was the genesis. That's how it started coming. As far as your question of why have I used Bengali words, again, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
These topics are so quintessentially Bangla that you would not be doing justice to its nuances, to its aroma, to its fragrance, to its description, to its feel,
Yeah.
if you would not use, again, they are not overused, they are not force fitted, they
Right.
fit in very smoothly. So
Yeah.
much so that I believe the feedback that has been coming in, sorry, is that even non-Bengalis or people who haven't lived in Kolkata have had no problems with the words used, and some of them that may have been difficult. I've provided a glossary at the end of the book.
No, it added a
So
lot of local flavor, and actually it added a lot of beauty. We could connect with the
right.
title, with the stories of people living in Kolkata. So
Right. And also, I think books are a way to learn about other cultures, isn't it? So, if I am going to do a poem on, say, the book fair of Kolkata, which is one of the largest book fairs in Asia, and still number two or three, and in terms of footfall, largest anywhere. I can't not use local sentiment and language and all of that. And it should give you an insight if you're sitting in Chennai or any other part of the world or country. It should tell you how mad and passionate we are about books, and how, despite you know so many changes and so many conveniences. The Boimala is still, uh, we all wait for it. And this time, incidentally, when the book fair was on and I went there twice to sign my books, we crossed a whopping I don't know, some enormous figures were getting posted because 2 years, because of the pandemic, the book fair was not held. And this city loves its book fair as much as I think it does love its Durga Puja. So you have to come and see it. Only then can a third person understand the madness
Yeah.
around it, the love and the passion. So yeah.
Right. So, also, like every poem in this collection is preceded by a very crisp writer, written mostly in humorous or conversational style. So, this is rarely found in poetry books. And how did you come up with the idea of introducing each poem with a few lines? It was really interesting to read something like that. So, if you could tell us.
Okay, thank you for that. Akila, actually, I don't know when I sat and thought of that, but I wanted to sort of introduce my equation with each of these topics. For example, in Cha, I have mentioned that I happen to be primarily a coffee drinker. So I can't put that in the poem. You know, that would become, I mean, I could have, but I'm trying to say that I wanted to share my equation with each of these 24 topics and sort of ease the reader in before the reader started reading the poem. It's like get a little teaser into the topic. So if there are some topics that could be a little distant or a little alien to an outsider meaning somebody who's not Bengali or who's from outside Kolkata, then reading that introduction would help the reader to sort of grasp or get a broad sense of the topic. And then perhaps he or she would be better footed to appreciate and understand the poem. Also, in the introduction, what I have done is I have started giving the basic definition of that topic as Wikipedia gives it. So, any of these topics, if you open the introduction, the first thing that you read is how does Wikipedia, describe anything, whether, say for example the monkey cat, okay, which is a hilarious thing in the city. So I have first explained the definition, uh, which wiki gives us. Then I have explained my observation or my equation with that topic, and then the poem begins. So it's just a little bit of an appetizer, if you will.
That's a good point. Like, you have used the brief as an appetizer. That was really interesting.
Thank you.
And like your poems have a charming simplicity, and they are mostly conversational in style. Like as you said, they are based on very simple things like umbrella or a tea. So, what are your thoughts on writing simple versus complex poetry and making poems accessible for every reader? As usually, readers have two extreme viewpoints about poetry. One is that it is good if it is difficult to understand. Some people think like that, readers. And the other is that poetry is hard to understand and hence not for everyone. It's not accessible for everyone. So, what are your thoughts on these two extreme viewpoints about poetry?
So there are many questions interwoven in that one question. Let me try and tackle each one. First of all, first of all, let me explain how I write, and then we'll come to how I write poetry because I write prose as well. I don't try to adopt somebody else's voice when I'm writing. I try to find my own voice because ultimately the reader should be reading Supriya Newar, not a weak or a faint echo of Supriya who reminds him or her of somebody else. Why you should not be reminded of somebody else's work in my style of writing. It could be maybe the storyline, sorry, in some particular writing could be similar, or the maybe some character reminds you of something that is different. The plot could be similar, the setting could be similar, but the voice that you are creating through words must be your own. Otherwise, I give tremendous importance to authenticity in writing. Um, so therefore, it's not that I'm shying away from particularly shying away from using, say, a large word if necessary, or maybe a hard word if necessary. But neither am I trying to overly or unduly or forcefully ornament my writing by using verbose language so that I may look like a very erudite writer to my reader. That's not the idea. The first mission that I have is how effectively have I managed to convey what I wish to convey? The first question is that if you're sitting in Chennai, are you, Akhila, or
Yeah.
Delhi?
Yes, Chennai.
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 So if sitting in Chennai, if you've not got a fragrance of Kolkata from this poem, then no amount of difficult usage of words would be any good. So
Yeah.
it isn't about the verbosity. It is about, first of all, have I managed to communicate the fragrance, coming to poetry, communicate the fragrance, the idea, of what I'm trying to say. Number one. So the effectiveness. The number two is how beautifully has it been captured? How originally has it been captured? uh, have I managed to show you a perspective, say, of, and do remember that these are such everyday, hopelessly ordinary subjects that anybody reading it would have said, "What's the big deal? Anyone can write on this." You know, I mean, right from student in primary school to anybody can sit and write a poem on Chalmuri. My question is, nobody hasn't.
Yeah.
Nobody has done that. Uh, because why? Because sometimes I think we place poetry at a pedestal where we feel that either it must be absolutely tragic, or it must have some sort of a level of unreachability, and if it is within reach, it is not poetry.
True.
This is ridiculous. This is absolutely wrong, because if to me poetry is something that helps me look at a subject more closely, makes a subject interesting. If we haven't looked at all the subjects possible, nobody has. But suppose an everyday affair is brought to you, which is in front of your nose all the time, every day, and somebody picks it up and says, "Hey, have you looked at it? This is the beauty that lies in a rickshaw." So I think that is the beauty of art or poetry or any creative expression, that you can take the ordinary and show to your reader or viewer, or so whether you're making a movie or anything, this is the extraordinary part about this. It is, I'm not saying it is easier to take an extraordinary subject and showcase it. I'm not saying that. That's also hard. But the fact is that we mustn't think that poetry should only be restricted to stuff that is placed on a very high pedestal, where I have to arch my heels to reach it. Uh, you know, it must be something within reach. I mean, a common everyday flower is as much a flower as an exotic, wildflower. So it is up to you to appreciate each one's fragrance for its own.
Right.
So I don't think that those who say that poetry is not for me, I'd love to meet those people and I can guarantee you that I will convert them very soon and quite easily, because I do feel, nobody says music is not for me. Everybody enjoys some form or the other of music.
True.
When they say poetry is not for me, my only response is you haven't read the kind of poetry that is meant for you. That's all. You haven't developed a flavor for it.
Definitely.
Uh, as simple as that. But I genuinely believe that, in all this chaos and all the confusion and conundrums that we have passed through, even 10 minutes of sitting with a poem, either reading it, writing it, or rehearing it, can give you a lot of orientation, can give you a lot of perspective, can give you a laugh, can give you a smile, can tell you not to take yourself so seriously. Everything that you have gone through, the world has already seen.
Right.
Um, may I add that ours is a land which is so rich in poetry. It would be a shame to miss out on such fantastic regional poetry, even English today, that is available to us, and we're very well within our reach, and our elders and our grandparents and aunts and uncles. If you just sit with them, they have a treasure trove of poetry that they know. It would be a shame to have it all go.
Right.
So yeah, that's a long answer to your loaded question.
Yes. Okay. So, uh, like some of your poems, Supriya, are written in free verse. When I was reading your poems, I realized and noticed. And while some others have a rhyming pattern. So, if in modern poetry, especially the poetry of current times, like expression and spontaneity is given more importance as compared to rhyme. There are different, schools of and thoughts of poetry these days. So, what are your thoughts on this, and what do you enjoy as a poet more, writing free verse poetry or rhyme?
So, straight answer there, I'm still old school and I still like my poetry to have a meter and a rhythm.
Okay.
Uh, that doesn't mean I don't enjoy free verse. Once in a while, yes.
Hmm.
But, Akhila, I have consumed far more Indian poetry than Western, I would say. I won't say English over Hindi over Urdu or Urdu. I'm
Yeah.
saying poetry that has had an Indian context. I have consumed that much, much, much more. I have read, the usual classics, which all of us have. I've mentioned some of those names in my introduction as well. And if you see Indian poetry, tends to have some sort of a meter and a rhythm more often than the free verse phenomena in our country. I think is not more than a couple of decades old. Even before that, it was far more kind of set to a rhythm and a tone and a tenor and a meter kind of a thing. And that's what I've grown up on. That's what, I can recite hundreds of poems which are set to. It's also easier to sort of memorize. I don't know how that happens, but because of that meter and rhythm and rhyme, it's far easier to commit to memory. I don't even try, but maybe if I've read it five, six, seven, 10 times, it starts because of the rhyme and the meter. It starts finding a place in your memory,
Right.
and also it's great fun to recite poetry. It need not always be yours. It's great fun to recite poetry to live audience. So I tend to write much much more in rhythm in meter than in free verse. Although I have nothing against those who write and prefer free verse, that's absolutely their call. Would you like to share? Would you like me to share with this voice maybe a couple of poems for our readers?
Yeah, yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Do you want to suggest which one I might?
I really like two poems regarding which you were also discussing. One was Cha and one was Chata. So these were
Oh,
the two
okay.
poems I really liked.
Okay. So we'll do both. Let me do one, and then after a while we can do the other.
Yeah.
Chhata was a particularly short one, and lots of other people have liked Chhata. Cha, we'll do Cha, shall we?
Cha. Yeah.
Okay, one second. So why don't you read the introduction and then I'll read the poem?
Okay.
You
Actually,
have the book around you?
yeah. Actually, it's the ebook I have bought. I
Right.
just
It's page 57.
yeah. Just one second. It's taking some time actually, my e-reader. One second. Okay. One second.
Or should I go ahead and read the poem?
Uh, okay. You can read the poem maybe after that. It's page number
Sure.
57, right? Cha.
Yeah.
Cha. I'll just open it. Yeah. So I'll give the introduction. It's open now. So the type of Indian tea made by boiling tea leaves with sugar, milk, and spices. Though I'm primarily a coffee drinker, I have to say that a good cup of Darjeeling first flush in the afternoon is often exactly what the doctor prescribed.
Right. So here goes Cha.
Yeah.
No eulogy can suffice, nor can any rhyme. Whatever a clock may say, any time is tea time. You could start your day with it, or wait till you get to work. A Monday morning, a pile of files, but tea is sure to perk. The slumber of sultry afternoons, the heat, the humidity. How do you think we counter both? Of course, with a cup of tea. On washed out rainy evenings, as you watch the world go by, there's nothing quite like sipping a cup of masala chai.
Mhm.
Once only a medicinal herb, it was called Camellia sinensis until it made it to our land where its saga found its genesis. Cut to present times, the chai is a phenomena proudly Indian. Sorry, in Kolkata, a cup of tea is nothing short of religion. We like it in earthen mugs instead of in plastic cups. We like it with a cigarette or with a Mari biscuit. We like to savor it with a sound after it has come to a boil and browned. We like to drink it in various ways, from street style. Sorry, I apologize. We like to drink it in various ways, from street side stalls and pretty cafes. Our lebu cha comes with a dash of lime. A pinch of beet noon makes it sublime. Liquor in Kolkata doesn't always mean booze. Sometimes it could just be tea leaves, well infused. A brew to swear by is cha made with ginger. It suits gola batha and is a must have in winter. For flavors more delicate, there's the first and second flush. If prepared correctly, you get an amber blush. When someone comes visiting from out of town, they balk at the amount of tea we gulp down. They are amazed to see mounds of stacked bar consumed at every corner, hour after hour. The chawala who holds his kettle over coals, whose tall sleight of hand he perfectly controls. How cha becomes to every adda a catalyst, bringing together Babu, Banya, and activist. One could go on and on, but without saying any more, let me summarize by saying we are all chakor.
I really like this one.
Sorry about the throat.
I think probably you should have a cup of cha right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have been having ginger tea.
Gola betha, you have described in that.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, so that was really hilarious, humorous, and a very nice poem, which I really enjoyed. And my next question is about like your poems, like Cha and Chata. They are based on very simple themes, and they are drenched in feelings of nostalgia and childhood memories. Because when I was reading your work, I felt really nostalgic. And what was the process of writing these poems? Have you been writing them for many years, or are they a fresh recollection of your memories?
No, these are all absolutely fresh poems. There's only one poem in the whole book,
Mhm.
which is Jhalmuri, which is masala muri. We call it
Hmm.
Jhalmuri in Kolkata, which was written a few years ago.
Hmm.
And one of those days when I all of us must have had Jhalmuri a million times in our lives. I don't know what happened that day that I had Jhalmuri and I came back and decided to write a poem around it. Sunil Kaushal says, beautiful ode to Cha. Thank you so much, Sunil. Uh, so Jhalmuri was written, I think, a couple of years ago, and like so much of our writing that sometimes gets written and it lies in the computer or in a diary or whatever, didn't think of developing it into anything further. It was just a solitary piece of poem lying. But all this is absolutely fresh, Akila. This has been written in the last months of 2021 and the first couple of months, I think January and February of 2022. So, having said that, even if you think it's taken me only 4 odd months to write all of this out, it has taken me 4 decades and more to absorb these topics well enough and to really know them inside out to be able to sort of weave poetry around them. So when sometimes when somebody tells me that oh, that barely took you a day to write, I said no, you're wrong. That took me 45 years to write because you know
The observation,
no, because I mean, when I was 45, I would say that it's taken me 45 years to write this. No, it's not taken me a day because it's come out now
yeah.
uh, that way. So, and the process was once I got consumed with the idea, once my publisher was also convinced. I had sent him the concept and I had sent him Jalmuri and I think one or two more. And he really enjoyed it. I must say, he really encouraged me and he said that if we can have a full collection, then this could turn into something. Once that nod came along, and once I was also personally convinced that I can see a collection happening, I couldn't do anything. Every single waking minute, I was, it was like if I wanted to do a poem on a particular topic. You see, you asked me earlier that is it hard to write, uh, you know, poetry or something about simplicity versus complexity and so on.
Yeah.
It is actually very hard to present something simply
Simple, yeah.
and yet keep it keep keep it solid but simple. So you really have to think. You really have to eat, breathe, and sleep and think that topic or that canvas really. So once I decided to do this and I started on it, and the Omicron wave was very high. So in any case, people were staying in the last month of 2021, December, and all of January. And this is all I was doing. I mean, non-stop. Literally, even in my sleep, I was smelling. I've had some topics that I thought of literally in my sleep. That okay, I must do a poem on this topic. And then next day, I would sit and I still write with poetry. I still write on paper and using a pencil actually. And I would sit next day and I would start writing out something and not liking it, and also all the poems are more or less set to a certain rhythm and meter, but the meter and the rhythm changes. There are some poems that have a very fast turning meter, which means that the lines are very short, and some that are longer. Cha is the longer one, where the sentences are longer. Sorry, yeah. So that's been the process. Once I started doing it, I was only doing this. I got completely absorbed.
So, what are the other things which inspire you to write apart from your, daily life in Kolkata?
Um, What are the other things? So I've done a lot of non-fiction. Over, I think I would primarily categorize myself as a non-fiction and poet versus over fiction. Having said that, at some point I'd sure like to give that a try as well. I'm greatly, involved with Indian classical and folk music. So sometimes I think musically and not always in words. Maybe it will come out in words, but sometimes, and poetry and music go very closely hand in hand.
Right.
Uh, so in our culture, good poetry simplifies music, and quite interestingly, when you do anything well, I mean, a sportsman, Roger Federer hits the perfect shot, and you say, "Wow, that's sheer poetry." So poetry is not only about words; it is really about doing something beautifully, perfectly. It's a joy to watch and see and appreciate. So it's really I don't know. It's the small things. It isn't always the grand things. Travel inspires me a great deal. Different cultures, nature tremendously. I love traveling. I love going to the mountains, and I have written tons and tons of travelogues that have got widely published here and there. So, and sometimes you're taking mental notes, and I was taking mental notes, and now I've got into the habit of quickly jotting it down on my mobile or the diary that I keep, because sometimes you forget you made a note of something, and that you want to write about, or you want to think, you want to capture further. And I think it is the small simple things that we take so much for granted. Um, uh, Maybe it's the city that I come from that has given me the seed that I tend to find a bylane more interesting than a highway. Uh, and as far as stories go and fragrances go, and well, they're not always fragrant. Some of the bylanes stink as well. But even then, I think they have more character, is what I'm trying to say. They have many more layers and much far more character than a buzzing highway. So I think it's those kind of elements that have been captured in most of my writing, this book and the other previous books. And music, as I said, and travel and the mountains and nature. These are the things that inspire me most. And people too. There are people with absolutely fascinating stories. Um, uh, we always think of people's stories as stories that are immensely triumphant or talking about very successful people. No, again, your next door neighbor could be holding a fascinating story of his life which we don't know.
Right.
So yeah, those things.
Great. So, what are your future writing plans, and are you planning to venture into any other genre of writing, like short stories or flash fiction or fiction?
uh, like I said, I think I'm primarily more of a non-fiction writer and a poet versus fiction of any sort, short story, flash fiction, fiction, etc. But having said that, I sincerely believe that there is a novel in my belly. I'm very, very sure of it. And I just have to find a little bit of faith and maybe a little bit of encouragement from my publisher as well, where I can just sit down and start writing it. And maybe all these years of so much travel and absorption of different cultures and exposure to different kinds of lives can find a space. Although I have no plans to start writing it anytime soon, but I do believe that if I push myself just a little, I think I might have a good novel in my belly, which should come out sometime.
which
And
is
other than that, I think I'd love to come out with, a collection of Urdu poetry. I enjoy writing in Hindi Urdu very, very much.
hmm,
And there's a whole lot of poems and nazms written here and there that have been, some have been published, not too many, because I wasn't sharing those. I wasn't even trying to get them published. I was just maybe writing those for my joy and space and sharing it with some close circles. But with every passing day, people are saying that this should find a larger audience. So at some stage, I'd love to have some kind of a Urdu, Hindi Urdu or Hindustani poetry collection out. Let's see if that happens.
that's great. So, are there any favorite poets or poetry books that you would like to recommend to our viewers?
Well, I don't know what kind of viewers we have, what is their age group or profile, or so it's hard to recommend
Your favorite, whatever you like to listen.
so much. I've mentioned even in the introduction. For example, I have said that my earliest fragrances of poetry go back to Madhushala by none other than Harivansh Rai Bachchan. I didn't even know what Madhushala meant. I must have been 10 years old. But the sheer flow of that poem, I had it committed to memory much before I understood what it meant. I knew the whole poem. I mean, not the whole poem, it's a very long piece of work, but at least 10, 20 stanzas by work. I knew it by rote. My dad would recite it often, and that had gone and found a place in my muscle memory. I would definitely say that Kabir now is so much back in fashion. Everyone's doing rock Kabir and over a guitar and Kabir over a. That's cool. That's fine. If that's how you want to get introduced to Kabir, that's absolutely fine. But I think our the wise men of our country have written some fantastic classical poetry, whether it is Rahim or Kabir or Mirabai or Amir Khusro or Nanak or so many of them, and they are so easy to understand, and they are so timeless. You can live with 6 lines of Rahim or Kabir, and they will you will find that with every stage of your life, their relevance will not diminish. It will only become more and more relevant. And that is, I think, the hallmark of good poetry, that it does not diminish in relevance. It continues to find a meaning in your life. So coming from this country, I think, please get yourselves and your children exposed to that kind of poetry. Go and listen to live poetry. Listen to live poetry to fall in love with poetry. Listen to live poetry. Start reading poetry. Anything. Start reading simple stuff. Start reading Ruskin Bond. Start reading Roald Dahl. Read Vikram Seth. Read Golden Gate. Read if you want to read Hindi classic stuff. Of course, there's a whole world of Urdu ghazals which are the surest way to fall in love with poetry anywhere and anytime. That list is super long, and that can. But again, depending on any way that you want to start, you can start listening to Jagjit Singh, and because he's used some extremely simple Urdu poetry for his ghazals, and then you can switch off the music and start, appreciating only the words. So there are very many ways to get inducted, and then you start discovering. Don't always go on recommendation. Find your own poetry. See what is making you tick. See, the discovery is great joy. Finding a new poem or read a Rudyard Kipling. Read there's so many. I mean, the list is endless, and I'm only giving very selected classical sort of names. So I must say, and I must confess that I am not too well versed with very modern work. I tend to be a little old school with my tastes. So I am more well versed with that kind of stuff.
Okay. So please
Go ahead
also tell
and read my book as well. If you're reading the poetry, read my book as well.
right. That's
Yeah.
that's a really good one. So please tell us something about your publishing journey with Redomania.
My publishing journey with Readomania began with a different book in 2019, which is just the year before pandemic. It started with this book,
Kolkata
Kolkata
Chronicles.
Chronicles,
Right.
and Readomania is not here, I suppose, but they would tell you that this book did tremendously well, and Kolkata Classics is my second book with them. But the truth is that the editor, the publisher, both they have sorry, I think they genuinely enjoyed the writing, and they didn't. Calcutta Chronicles, I remember as soon as I presented the idea to Mr. Mukherjee, Dipankar Mukherjee, who's the publisher and the founder, he was literally sold on the spot. He said, "It sounds great." And uh, so I think also I think Readomania is a label that tries to encourage new writers and bring new voices and new writers to the fore, which is great. So I hope to do more work with them in the future.
That's great. At last, would you like to give some tips or suggestions to aspiring writers?
Well, I've already said the most important thing is the first thing to aspiring writers is read.
Right.
You don't run before you can crawl. So why must you write before you can read? First read and read everything. Don't make up your mind that 7 and 8 that I don't like science fiction or I don't like this or that. Read, and then gradually you will figure out that I tend to like this style better or this subject better or but first you must absorb. It's like uh, when we're in school, we taught all subjects, isn't it? And then we pick our favorites after a few years that I think I'd like to graduate in this or postgraduate in that kind of a thing. Um, so first, read a lot. Make reading a part of your life. As far as writing goes, I've already said what I firmly believe in that don't write only to get published. You'll never be with your writing. You won't be proud of your writing. Maybe you will get published, but first of all, if it's something which is artificial or acquired and not your own voice, you won't be able to sustain it. So maybe you will get luckily published here or there, but uh, your book should be an extension of your scent, your personality, your voice. More so in nonfiction and definitely so in poetry. You know, if you're voicing somebody else's ideas and thoughts, you're not doing justice to your own self. How can you do justice to your reader? Then comes the craft of writing. One is that maybe you have some sort of a flair, but just like any other art form or just like any other creative expression, whether it's painting or sports or cooking or anything, the more you do it, the better you become at it. So you can't say that I'm going to wake up one day and write a bestseller. It doesn't work like that. You have to chisel your work. You have to polish your craft, and that comes if you're going to be genuine about it. That will come gradually, and but that will take practice. That will take you sitting down with your thoughts, with your ideas, with what is it that you want to say, and how best can you say it. For example, I know for a fact that there are places. where I keep feeling that I can improve this, I can improve this. But the other thing is that you also want to write fresh stuff, so you don't always want to review your work, because and that's also a tricky thing about creative work, that when do you say stop? When do you, because it's never going to be perfect. It's, and how hungry are you as a writer? For example, I'm rarely fully satisfied with my work. Rarely. Maybe of the 24 poems, I'll say I think these two are really good. The rest are okay. And some of them, so but you leave the reviewing once it's out. You leave the reviewing to the readers. Let them judge and let them be the reviewers. That kind of a thing. So, to today's writer, I'd say that you're in a marvelous space in time, because there's so much scope. You can become a blogger and a vlogger and all kinds of things. But and for God's sake, do something with the vocabulary. This is, of course, I'm talking about the youngsters, who, because everything in their life is either awesome or incredible or epic or amazing. These are the 4 or 5 words left. Nothing is good anymore. Everything is awesome. Nothing is fine anymore. Everything is incredible. So I'm not sure where this overwhelming is going to leave us with. But I do think that vocabulary is a very necessary part of your armory as a writer. You have to grow it. Yeah, so those are some thoughts.
That was really helpful, Supriya. So, thank you, Supriya, for the very insightful conversation and for your time this evening.
Thank you so much.
So, friends, I would like to remind that tellmeyourstory.biz calls for registrations for TMY's review September 2022, themed on food and drinks in association with York Center for Asian Research. Last date for submissions is 20th June. Till then, stay well, stay safe, happy reading, happy writing. Goodbye.